What's going on, everyone? Jordan, we're back again. Week
We're back.
three of talking about MAUL Lord, the brand new Star Wars animated series on Disney Plus. My name's Mason. I run the Tall White Fountain Play channel, and joining me again this week is the amazing guest Jordan. Hello,
How you
Jordan.
doing?
How are you?
Good.
Yeah. So Shadow Lord episode 5 and 6. What are your kind of initial impressions right now?
Oh man, I mean this show just keeps getting better and better. I mean we've kind of been joking every time we get on to talk again. We're like, oh man, those were the best episodes now, and now these again. I mean, there's a lot to unpack here. Some of the coolest lightsaber duels in animation I think we've ever gotten, arguably. And I really like where the story's headed. So yeah, these were great.
Agreed. Yeah, like every week, obviously the first week we had to say they were our favorite and our least favorite because it
Yeah,
was the only two episodes we had. And now that we're through episode 6, so we're officially halfway through Shadow Lord.
yeah,
And
that's true.
I have to say that as much as I loved week 1 and 2, this week's episodes 5 and 6 are probably my favorite so far. And
Agreed.
I feel like these episodes too, I feel like this is the beginning of sort of phase 2 of the story, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Because
Yep.
the Empire's here now, right, on Janix. And we had the setup, right? The first 4 episodes kind of felt like a longer sort of setup with all the characters, the Janix police, Lawson, Devin, and Docky's characters, and, Maul, obviously what his motives are. And then now we are in sort of phase 2 where the Empire's here
Yep.
and the
They're here.
stakes are getting even crazier. So yeah, without further ado, we're just going to do what we have been doing in the past, which is just jumping right into the episodes here. So we're going to cut to our slideshow, handy dandy slideshow. And so this is the last frame, I guess, of episode 4, right? Where the Empire officially arrives on Janix. And we know that they're here because there's a giant Imperial Star Destroyer orbiting right above the city. So
Yep.
if that's not an immediate indicator that the Empire's arrived, I don't know what is. So, and it's just crazy because this one Star Destroyer just dominates the skyline. It
Oh
almost
yeah.
covers the entire kind of span of the city center. I feel like it's just this literal shadow cast, over the city.
Yep, and I love that we got, like the classic Star Wars shot of just the Star Destroyer just completely taking over the screen. You just see
Mm-hmm.
like the front tip, and then the whole thing is filling the screen, and then that awesome shot, of seeing it over the whole city, which was great.
And in a regular Star Wars trope as well, we sort of hear like a new sort of remix of the Imperial March,
Yep.
kind of. So that's where we left off. And now we're starting with episode 5, which is called Inquisition,
Mhm.
which it's really funny
Another good title.
because, of course, there's been a lot of different episodes of Star Wars Rebels, Tales of the Jedi, Tales of the Empire, different episodes of Star Wars where there's been Inquisitors and, as sort of a focal point. And I feel like all of the showrunners and writers have been keeping this name for an episode like locked away
Yeah, yeah,
somewhere
that's true. They've never
because
used it.
because it could have been used for so many different episodes before, in not in Shadow Lord necessarily, but just in Star Wars in general. And finally we have an episode of Star Wars that really deals with the Imperial Inquisitors called Inquisition, which I
Yep.
think is really funny.
And I love it too. We'll get into it more, but of course, like you said, we have seen the Inquisitors pop up a lot in Rebels. The Ahsoka show, and some of the other Tales of series episodes, and they've always been really cool to me. I've always liked them, but I honestly like I feel like I've never felt so threatened by them, like for
Right.
the protagonists and our main characters, but this for sure, is probably my favorite like introduction of the Inquisitors in a show, and just the way they handled it so far with Marok. So we'll get into that more, but I think they're doing a really cool job in this show so far with the Inquisitors.
I agree. They actually feel really menacing.
For sure.
And we'll get into it, when we get to Marok and the Inquisitors. But I agree with you. But so the episode opens again with some other sort of establishing shots of the Empire arriving on Janix. And there's a couple of things that I want to talk about just right off the gate before we really get into the story details, because as a huge nerd of just Star Wars vehicles and all of that, but also a huge Star Wars history nerd that loves the very specific, where are we in the timeline? How can we periodize Maul Shadow Lord? Like, where is this taking place specifically? And there's a couple of big clues that sort of reveal this information for us. So, the Imperial Star Destroyer shows up, and the first thing you would expect to see coming out of a Star Destroyer are TIE fighters, right? Like the ubiquitous Imperial ship. We do not see TIE fighters. There's not a single TIE fighter in either of these episodes, and there's a reason for that. What we have instead are LAAT gunships and I believe it's called a faux class attack shuttle. And these are actually Galactic Republic era ships. A lot of people call these like clone attack gunships or clone shuttles. And so these were actually used by the Galactic Republic. Now we know now that Maul Shadow Lord takes place quite literally, probably, if I had to guess, literally months or maybe just barely a year after the end of episode 3 and the fall of the Republic, because the Empire here on Janix is still using Republic era equipment, including Republic gunships and Republic shuttles to kind of move their troops around. So there's no TIE fighters yet. It's still early development. So we're really still in that very, very early transition stage from the Galactic Republic to the Galactic Empire. And it's cool to see some of these details. And speaking of the troops that these shuttles are ferrying around, we have not stormtroopers. We have TK troopers, which again they were first introduced in canon in the Bad Batch. And these were part of an Imperial, protocol, I guess you could say, or initiative called Operation War Mantle. And there was a whole episode about this in Bad Batch, but basically that was the code name of the project for the Empire to transition from using clone troopers to using stormtroopers. And the TK troopers were kind of the first phase of that transition where, they're not called stormtroopers quite yet, but they are the first generation of conscripted Imperial soldiers. So not clones that are born and bred, but actually just regular average people in the galaxy that are sort of conscripted by the Empire. And out of all of the different clone trooper designs we've had over the years, right? Phase 1, Phase 2, Commandos, all of that stuff, plus all the stormtrooper designs, TK troopers are my favorite. They've always been
these are awesome.
Favorite. I just love the way they look, so I'm going to nerd out a little bit about the TK troopers. And what's extra cool about them is that they are actually the design of the TK trooper is the original concept art for stormtroopers that Ralph McQuarrie drew up before the very first Star Wars movie. So it's cool that, almost 50 years later, they've made their way into Star Wars canon design for something. And I always loved the concept art, and the fact that it's been incorporated into canon like this is so cool and featured so prominently in a show like Maul Shadow Lord,
That is something I liked in Rebels a lot too, that, they kind of took from a lot of the original concept art, for the designs of the characters and how I think Zeb, that was the initial concept art for Chewbacca, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Species, yeah.
And I love when they do that, and I love when they go all in on that. Instead of just being like a little background thing or whatever, it's like, okay, the main character and one of the main characters in Rebels is concept art for Chewbacca, and the main troopers we're seeing here in Shadow Lord are concept art initially, which is really cool.
Awesome.
And because I love looking at this kind of stuff, the troopers and the different armor that they have. This is a really good kind of visual for those who may not be as familiar with the different phases or designs of trooper armor over the years. So on the left, there's the Phase 2 clone, and then we have on the far right, we have the Imperial Stormtrooper, and then the TK Trooper in the middle there. So you can actually really see how the design is sort of almost like a blending of the two in a cool way.
Yeah, that's what I love about the look so much too. It's got more of that clone look, which I mean, overall, in terms of all these armors, I always love the clone trooper armor. So it is a cool blend.
Yeah, and it doesn't stop at the troopers, of course. As I mentioned, there are Republic era vehicles that have been sort of converted into Imperial vehicles, and we see a lot of this. I guess we can call it an Imperial gunship now instead of a clone gunship. But instead of having the normal like Republic colors, like the red and all the different markings that would sort of signify like what battalion, the troopers belong to, when the Empire takes over, they get rid of all the color. It's all gray, it's all white, and that's kind of the end of it.
Like Apple branding.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like clean silver, white. There's no real colors. Although this is a tangent, but Apple has been introducing a lot of colored products recently, like the new MacBooks and stuff have like crazy different colors. But the Empire has stuck to like white, black, gray. That's kind of their deal. But it's pretty remarkable how quickly the Empire is taking over Janix, because pretty much immediately they have troopers stationed everywhere. They have them at street checkpoints on the road asking for people's ID. They've shut down all of the spaceports to leave the planet. They're checking people's IDs at the Bodekin Stadium we saw in last week's episodes. So they're like just off the gate, we have a lot of these establishing shots to show that the Empire is here in a big, it's not just like a small squad of troopers. It is a full battalion that has completely taken over the city, which is really cool.
This is a big deal to them.
Right. And we see Devin and Docky, kind of realizing that the city's been locked down very tightly, and it's kind of a foregone conclusion at this point that they need to leave the planet as soon as possible. And of course, we've had this conflict between Devin and Master Docky in last week's episodes, but it seems to be reinforced now where Devin, despite all of the things that are happening, still wants to stay and fight, to protect Janix or to defeat MAUL. But Docky kind of emphasizes the point that that's not what they're supposed to do. Their main objective is survival, and they're being hunted by the Empire, so they need to leave. And in the same token, there is lots of chaos going on at the police station right now, because the Empire is in the process of taking over all of their operations. So there's a lot of commotion going on at the Janix police station. And we have this scene of Lawson and Police Chief Kleiss kind of speaking to each other. And one of the things she says is, "Your droid has sure made a mess of things," referring to Two Boots, of course. And Lawson, despite this being his literal worst nightmare, right, the Empire showing up, he still kind of goes to bat for Two Boots and is like, well, he's just following protocol. He still is kind of defending Two Boots even after all of this has happened. And because of this, he even volunteers to sort of take responsibility or take the blame for the way that this MAUL case has been so mismanaged. But she doesn't let him take the blame for that.
No. But yeah, I'm sure he might feel, maybe a little guilty just because, as Two Boots kind of said, there is a bit of a personal thing for this whole situation for Lawson. I wonder, we still don't have, or, know all the details between him and his wife. But, who knows that if she wasn't involved with the Empire or, whatever his thoughts of the Empire are, if he would have just, followed protocol, initially, if it weren't for that. So I think we'll learn a little bit more about him with that. But
yeah. There's some personal things that he has with going with the Empire. It's not a total selfless,
Yep.
concern, which the episode gets into, actually, both of these
Hmm.
do. But one of the thing, like the last thing that Chief Kleiss says to Lawson is like, well, it could be worse. We could have been harboring Jedi, you know? And then Lawson kind of
Little
has a
does she
look,
know.
because, well, they kind of are. At least Lawson has, because he of course knows about Devin and Docky, and has met them, knows that they're Jedi, and let them leave before the police arrived. So, they think right now everyone else is under the impression that the only Force sensitives on the planet that the Empire needs to be worried about is Maul himself, but that's not true.
Hmm.
We've got 2 Jedi as well.
Yep.
But as the precinct is getting taken over by the Empire, we sort of meet the man in charge of the operation on Janix, who is a very immediately unlikable person.
Yep.
And his
What a
name,
joker.
what a joker. His name is Lieutenant Blake. And, he's a new character. He's not, from some other show or anything, as far as I know.
Yeah.
So he's sort of a new Imperial figure. And, he's very arrogant and, very full of himself. And I feel like he would just blend in perfectly in Andor. Like he would be,
Yes.
like he would work really well with Dedra Miro and, Chief Partagaz and all of these people, all these Imperials from Andor that we hate. I mean, he is part of that, personality type of people in the
Sure.
Empire. Because
Even some of the ones we saw in Rebels too.
yeah,
There were a bunch. I forget some of the names, but there was some funny banter like between Ezra and some of them.
yeah, I remember. I think one of them was Governor Price. She was put in charge of Lothal. She had like the
Yep.
short black hair. I remember she was kind of the same way. I feel like Star Wars kind of portrays the Empire in 2 ways. It's either like someone like Lieutenant Blake here, or like a total incompetent doofus, like just it's kind of used for laughs versus like actual threat. But I think this guy is pretty nasty, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So he shows up, and he tells them that the Empire is in charge, and he's in charge of all the operations on Janix until Maul has been apprehended. So that's their first goal. And the second goal is they're also looking for those who have continued to withhold information about Maul, Maul's appearance, because they know that Maul's been here for a while, and the people on the police force waited and waited and waited to tell the Empire. So he also wants to find the people who hesitated to contact them, which we know is Lawson, So he's not just after Maul, he's after, anybody who has sort of slighted the Empire in that way. And he immediately takes Chief Kleiss into interrogation. She just like gives up her weapon, and she's escorted away. And we don't see her being interrogated or where she really goes necessarily, but we've seen enough Imperial interrogation scenes in all the movies, and especially in Andor and stuff, that we know that it's pretty brutal. And if we have Inquisitors involved, that's even worse.
True.
But then we cut to Maul and his crew, who have retreated sort of further into the bowels of the city, the deep underground, through these like maintenance tunnels, like almost it feels like they're almost in like the core of the planet or something. Cause there's that there's that big tube that the camera sort of zooms down into, and they have this little base of operations, which looks pretty substantial to me. But, we cut to Maul and the crew. Rook Cast, his sort of second in command, speaks to Maul and asks why they're still on Janix if the Empire's here, that they need to leave and relocate somewhere else. And Maul refuses and says that they must stay because it's part of the plan. And I guess Rook already knows what that means, because the plan is Devin. That's Maul's plan. Mm-hmm. And Devin is still here. And so as long as Devin is still here and hasn't fully committed herself to being his apprentice, I think he's going to want to stay on Janix for as long as he can. But there's another character that's with them, which is freaking Vario, uh, who has remained in Maul's custody this whole time. And he's finally like, look, I've done everything you asked me. I've held up my end of the bargain. And my entire syndicate operation on Janix has been completely hijacked thanks to the Empire showing up. So what am I getting? What have I gotten out of this? And Maul's just like, your life. That's what you've gotten out of this. Yeah, I haven't killed you. And he's like, all right.
Yeah, he honestly is lucky to even still be alive at this point.
Exactly. And then he's like, well, can I go? Like, am I free to leave? He's like, yeah. Maul's like, yeah, you are free to leave, but, good luck with the Empire up top, good luck dealing with them. And then Vario's like, you know what? Actually, I think I'm going to stay here. I actually like living in the bowels of the city. It's kind of nice down here. So as weird as this is of him deciding to remain with Maul, it low key is the smart choice, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think he does feel protected in a way and knows that, he kind of can't survive on his own, whether it's against Maul or now against the Empire. So I think it is the best choice for him.
And we see the rest of Maul's team here, which of course are the Mandalorians. And they sort of pull Rook aside, who's sort of their leader, right? And they say that they're sort of concerned that now that the Empire's here, they're going to stop getting paid or the money's going to stop coming. And Rook obviously is like, shut up. We have a job to do. Don't worry about it, basically. But it was kind of interesting because it seems like these Mandalorians are actually like for hire. Initially I had imagined that they were still sort of remnants of Death Watch that had remained loyal to Maul as like a ruler of Mandalore. But it seems like that's not the case, and they're actually just bounty hunters for hire that are just getting paid to do this. They don't really have allegiance to Maul, or they do so far as they're getting paid to be loyal to him, but they don't actually have any sort of honor or loyalty to Maul in an honorable way, the way that they, that the Death Watch was, during the Clone Wars with Maul, for example. So I thought that was actually a little interesting detail that we got through the dialogue. So these aren't like devoted Maul fans. These are just Mandos that are for hire. I think the only person that unironically cares about Maul or believes in his vision is Rook herself, I think.
Yeah. And, and I guess she was, initially with him and helped get him back, to his feet. But, it is interesting to see because, Maul is, even though he's been a part of different groups and he's had some followers, he's always kind of just in it for himself. Mm-hmm. He's always, his motives are always to help him or, he, of course, has other, visions and maybe some morals to why he believes what he's doing is important for not only himself, but, so I think it's interesting to see, some tension within this group because I guess they, are seeing a guy who's all in it for himself. So, and if they're not getting paid or not making that much money, well, what's the point?
Right. And this is really the first time in the whole series that we've seen like a rift in there. Cause at this point, it just seems like, okay, these guys are all tight. Like Maul's group is like a well-oiled machine. Everybody's in it to win it. There's no signs of a crack, they just seem to be on it. But this is the first time we're starting to see a little bit of that loyalty and a little bit of Maul's group kind of start to shake a little bit once the Empire's shown up. They're starting to get cold feet, I think. And I don't blame them, honestly.
Yeah.
But then we cut back to Lawson and Two Boots, and it's very clear that Lawson is still sort of upset, and Two Boots doesn't really understand why. But Lawson's like, look, you're a smart droid, but you don't get it. Like the Empire is here, and this isn't like the miracle that you thought it would be. Like, it's not going to end well. And of course, Two Boots doesn't really resonate with that.
Yeah.
And right at this moment, Lawson is like Lieutenant Blake from across the room or whatever. He like snaps his fingers and these troopers just get up and take Lawson to the like he doesn't even really say anything. He like
Yeah.
snaps his fingers
The
multiple
signal.
times in the episode to get people to do stuff, which is kind of a funny detail to me. But yeah, Lawson. So Kleiss, I guess, had been finished being interrogated, and now they're taking Lawson into to be interrogated. And before he goes into the interrogation room, Lawson asks Lieutenant Blake, what happened to Chief Kleiss? I want to talk to her. And he just says, oh, she's been reassigned permanently. That's all that he says. So I don't know what that means. That means
No
they
idea.
probably killed her, honestly. She's probably dead, or they just sent her to Imperial prison or something. She's already locked up.
Yeah. And unfortunately, she really didn't have much info to share because Lawson kind of kept a lot of it from her. So, of course, they're really just trying to get any info they can on Maul. So they probably just assumed that she was lying or realized, all right, she has nothing to offer, so don't need her.
Yeah, and she seemed to be like pretty close with Lawson.
Yeah.
And I feel like maybe even though she was being interrogated, she may have not really given up Lawson or anything.
True.
She may have just been super stubborn and they just dragged her away. But so Lawson is taken into this dark room with a table. And when he walks in, he sees like these little scratch marks or something on the table, which I guess it's, a sign of a struggle or something happened.
Yeah.
I don't know if those were there before Kleiss got interrogated or not. Those could be her scratch marks that she had made, possibly. Who knows? But we find out that the person who is in charge of interrogation is the first brother, Marok, Imperial Inquisitor. So now we kind of the fear factor for Lawson has raised tremendously, because this isn't just some random Imperial officer or even one of those little like torture droids that like this is an Imperial Inquisitor who he is trained to break people's minds, and especially people who are not force sensitive, they are really kind of screwed when you're dealing with
and obviously
Inquisitor.
Trained to kill Jedi, so
yeah, exactly. So
mental and physical toll he could put on you.
right. And it's just so creepy how they introduce him, right? His hands he just comes out from the shadows and he just puts his hands on Lawson's shoulders, and it's just this very
maybe he's
creepy
really
thing.
the Shadow Lord.
Yeah, maybe he's the true Shadow Lord, literally. It's basically two Shadow Lords hunting each other, I feel like.
Yep.
Is what's going on between Maul and Marok. But so now that Marok is officially shown up, obviously we've seen him in the trailer, so this wasn't a huge reveal, but I want to take a quick detour and talk about Marok, because we have seen him before. This is a named Imperial Inquisitor, and so his name is Marok, but he's also known as the First Brother. Like I said, he first appeared in Ahsoka, the Ahsoka series, as one of Thrawn's, minions or bodyguards or people that were protecting Thrawn and his plan. And it's sort of implied in Ahsoka that Marok is dead and he's been reanimated by Night Sister magic. So, but he's like very clearly normally alive in Maul Shadow Lord. So I'm not sure if we'll actually see what happened to him and how he ended up being dead, or how that will work. Maybe Maul will kill him, something. We'll get to that when we theorize about next week's episodes. But
so I forget did he even actually talk in the Ahsoka series?
I think he maybe literally had one or two words, if any.
Yeah.
If any. But now that you say that, I don't even think it was even that. I literally don't think he even spoke.
Yeah.
But Marok has he is a pre-established character. He's not a new character for Shadow Lord. So I figured I would mention that before moving on. But we cut back to Devin and Master Daki. Again, sort of trying to figure out what to do and where to go from here. And Daki continues to encourage her to, agree with him that they need to leave the planet. But Devin says that she's tired of running away. She's tired of living this life, on the run and being hunted. She wants to make a stand and fight. She doesn't want to live like this anymore. And she also says that running away and hiding is a waste of our abilities as Jedi.
Yep.
And where did we kind of hear that type of thinking before? We heard it from Maul when Devin and Maul interacted.
Yep.
So Docky says, it's your voice that speaks, but it's Maul's words that I hear, is what he tells Devin. So
it's already having an influence on her.
Yeah. And she sort of implies that they should team up with Maul to take on the Empire. She says to Docky, look, I don't like or trust Maul any more than you do, but we both hate the Empire. He's very powerful. Together, if we work together, we could defeat the Empire. And Docky obviously is not keen on that idea. And he says that the Empire might be a common enemy, but Maul will never be our ally. So it's not an enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of philosophy. Docky does not adhere to that principle. And then we cut back to the police station where Lawson's son, Riley, has arrived at the station, and through all the chaos and everything going on, he sort of sneaks his way into the police precinct and runs into Two Boots, who immediately recognizes Riley, and they sort of have a conversation. And of course, Riley's trying to figure out where his dad is because his dad's not picking up his phone calls. They don't really have phones in Star Wars, but he's not picking up whatever his messages. And Two Boots tells Riley that his dad is currently under interrogation, and will tell him when or if his dad is released. And then Riley's like, if? What do you mean if he's released? What's going on? And Two Boots, he's kind of like unempathetic when he's talking to Riley. And Riley's a little confused because he's like, Two Boots, you've known me since I was, my whole life, basically. Like, it's me. It's Riley. It's Lawson's kid. Like, why are you acting like this? And he doesn't really respond. But what he does, he like takes Riley's like shoulders and just sort of starts pushing him out of and he's like, you should just go back home. You shouldn't, you don't belong here. And of course, as he's leaving, Lieutenant Blake comes and, asks Two Boots how he allowed this civilian to be in the police precinct. And then Two Boots explains that it's Captain Lawson's son, Riley. And they kick him out. So I used to, this scene sort of changed my opinion on Two Boots, because I thought that this would be a moment where he would see Riley and it would kind of shake him out of this, whatever he's, his programming of being super pro Empire, seeing Riley, but that didn't seem to happen here.
No. Yeah. It's, obviously we don't fully know the history, between him and Lawson, but, we've seen a lot of, droid relationships and where it seemed like they truly cared for, who they were with. So I don't know. It seems like he just doesn't have that same part to him. Maybe just because of the, wiring for his kind of a droid and the fact that he is like, a cop droid in a way. They just maybe don't have the same ability to have empathy like other droids. But especially to his kid, and he, was still telling Lawson that, he still thinks this is the right call to get the Empire. And then he now realizes that Lawson might not even be coming back, and he doesn't really seem too fazed by it.
Right. And even also, like, I have to accept that, Two Boots is a police droid. More than just a droid, he's a police droid. So he's probably extra, programmed to be, extra strict when it comes to protocols and procedures and law and order and all of that. But he seemed to have this really kind of bubbly personality in the beginning with Lawson.
It's true.
And as each episode has progressed, as we've gotten further through the series, his spark and his kind of fun personality has really started fading away, I think. But we cut back to Lawson's interrogation, where he just tells Maroc that, you know, he was the only one that survived his ambush with Maul, and which makes Maroc very skeptical. But he's not like being tortured. He's just asking questions, which I thought we'd actually see like some sort of crazy like torture scene or something. But Lawson is very reserved and composed, and so is Maroc, and there's no real like physical torture or anything going on during the interrogation, which is kind of atypical for Star Wars. I feel like anytime we have the Empire, there's always like some violence involved, but it just seems to be a pretty normal back and forth conversation. But then we cut to a train station in Janix. It's sort of like, I guess, a subway system, because it kind of appears to be underground, which is cool. I love how we're continuing to build out all of the different locations in Janix. It really feels like a lived-in city.
Definitely.
There's a whole complicated subway network. Like, you know, you can even see posters in the station of all the different stops and the different lines that connect through the city. I just love little details like that. But so they expect to sort of get on the train and get out of the city. But as the train arrives in the station, a huge squad of TK troopers comes out, and they're like, "Oh crap!" And then Docky like turns away, and he's like, "You know, I don't really care much for trains anyway, so you know, we can find another way." And but as they're leaving the station, they get stopped by a trooper, and they ask for their ID, and in a scene that all of us are probably very familiar with, Master Docky waves his hand and uses a Jedi mind trick, and he says, "You've already seen our identification. You know, we are free to go," which, of course, I don't need to say this, but is a reference to Obi-Wan in A New Hope. You know, doing the Jedi mind trick on the trooper. But here's something that's interesting, right? In Shadow Lord, Master Docky says, "You've already seen our identification."
Mm-hmm.
And Obi-Wan said, "You don't need to see our identification. We can move along." So it's like they're doing the same thing, they're achieving the same goal, but it's like they're saying the opposite, thing. Which is kind of I don't know if that was deliberate choice, but I thought that was kind of interesting.
For sure.
But the as they're doing the Jedi mind trick works, but as they're walking away, another trooper comes up and he's like, "Why did you let them leave?" And then the other trooper snaps out of it, and then there's a big sort of fight between them. So unfortunately, Devin and Docky they have lost their incognito mode cover and are forced to fight a bunch of TK troopers in the subway and make kind of a big scene out of that. So they're kind of exposed. And during the fight, Docky kind of gets injured again a little bit. You know, he already was injured with the fight with Maul last week.
He's getting worn down.
And he keeps getting worn down. And it's just like it's like a death by 1,000 cuts kind of thing with him. Mm-hmm. Where it's like each time they have a physical confrontation, he gets weaker and weaker. So this is another one of those small encounters that weakens him even more. And I don't know how much longer he's going to last, to be honest with you, Jordan.
No.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think it's looking good for Docky.
No. And then we cut back to Riley, who has gone home as Two Boots told him to, but he calls his mom. Her name is Rhea Lawson, or Drea Lawson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so, we've seen the family portrait of, Brander, Drea, and Riley together on like the police desk and all of that. But this is the first time we've actually, seen her as a character make her appearance finally. And we knew that her and Brander are separated. We know that she lives off planet somewhere, and we know that she works for the Empire, and that's really all we've known so far. And Riley contacts his mom and explains, what's going on, that the Empire showed up, dad's in custody, what's going on. And all she really tells, she kind of says, I don't like how she responds. She's like, just follow the Empire's orders. They're here to protect everybody. That's what they're there to do. Just comply with everything that they're saying and just follow the protocol and everything will work out. And
yeah, I don't like that either.
I don't know. It just doesn't sit right with me.
Yep. I mean, I guess we don't know how much she really knows about how brutal the Empire could be yet, and we don't exactly know her, actual job there. But yeah, I mean, that's not how you shouldn't just allow the Empire to take control over you, and I mean their whole society seemed like it was, a good, society, and nothing wrong with their way of living. So I mean, this is just a complete change of lifestyle for everyone.
It doesn't sit well with us, and it doesn't sit well with Riley either. Like, he's left, I think, even more confused or scared than he was before he called, which I think was probably not the right response.
Nope.
So I don't know. I'm not a big fan of Drea right now, or period. I thought we would, I knew we would probably see her at some point in the show, but I didn't really think she would be this sycophantic with the Empire. Like, she didn't even really think about it. That was the only thing she said was just like, yeah, duh. Like, just follow what they say. It wasn't even, she didn't even really put any thought into what she said.
No.
But then we cut to Marok, who has traveled back to the sort of the crime scene where Maul and Lawson, the police and Maul had that big standoff in the city last week. And he's sort of walking around looking at the destroyed police droids and all of the aftermath of the firefight. And then he sees all these lightsaber slash marks on the floor, on the walls. And something interesting that he does is he like takes his hands or his fingers and he sort of runs his fingers along the lightsaber mark on the walls and on the floor. And while he's doing this, we can hear like audio cues of the fight between Maul and Daki and Devin. And that's not a normal Force ability. It's not like a super common thing we can see Jedi or Sith or people with the Force do. Like, so it's almost like he can like recall the memory from touching the lightsaber marks of Maul's saber or whatever.
Yeah, we really haven't seen this too many times. So it's pretty cool to see that he's capable of it.
And so the actual official, so there is an official term for this phenomenon or ability, and it's called Force psychometry is what they call it.
Yep.
And it's basically the ability, if you're Force sensitive, it's the ability to acquire information or memories about someone or something that has happened just by touching an object. So in Marok's case, it was the marks of the saber. And we've seen a couple of notable examples of this in Star Wars before. The biggest one for me was Cal Kestis from the Jedi games. That was like, in order to collect and learn about things that were going on in the game, you could touch certain objects and it would sort of, replay these audio cues or this dialogue of memories of things that have happened. So it's a very cool ability. Cal Kestis isn't the only one though. We saw it actually in Ahsoka too.
That's right.
Ahsoka like touched the star map and was able to tell that, where Sabine went. And then I know Quinlan Voss in Legends and in canon was a Jedi too that was known to have Force psychometry. It used to be No, go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Do we see any of that in because he popped up in the Ventress Tales series, right? I forget if we saw him do that or
Yeah,
not.
I don't think so. I
No,
haven't watched those in a while, but
same here.
I think I know there was an episode of Clone Wars where he like teamed
Hmm.
up with Obi-Wan
Oh yeah, that's
to
right.
like hunt down Cad Bane or something,
Yeah,
and he used the psychometry ability to like sense where Cad Bane was going or whatever. Um, so it used to be an extremely rare Force ability, but now we're seeing more and more Force users have this ability,
sure.
and Marok, I think, is the first dark side character that we've seen able to do this, which is kind of
Yeah.
cool. Um, but while Devin and Daki are leaving, of course, the Empire has spotted them completely. And Spybot, who is Maul's little droid, if we remember, he like flies under this Imperial ship and hacks into their surveillance systems and is also able to see that the Empire has found Devin and Daki and also kind of has sort of an idea of their location.
Yep.
Um, and once they find this out, Rook reports this to Maul. You know, they say that we know where Devin and Daki are, and we know that the Empire has detected them and they're being hunted. And I wanted to draw attention to this scene too because we see Maul's leg getting repaired because, you know, he kind of got injured a little bit during that fight with Master Daki in episode 4, and he was sort of limping, but now he's been repaired a little bit. So it was kind of a cool, you know,
Yeah.
it's always nice to see Maul get hurt a little bit.
I know.
For
Yeah,
me,
it's something that we really don't see often at all.
it's
So
super
it's
rare.
nice change of pace.
Yeah. So, then we sort of end the episode where, Daki and Devin say, you know, they really only have one person that they can go to now because they can't leave the city. They're trapped. The Empire has taken over everything. There's no way out of the city, and they've been identified as Jedi, and now they're actively being hunted specifically. So where do they go? The only person that they know who's even somewhat of an ally right now is Lawson.
Yep.
So Lawson gets home from the interrogation and he walks into his house. He walks into his kitchen or his living room, and Daki and Devin are just sitting there in his kitchen, just hanging out. And that is the final shot of the episode.
Yep.
And it just, it really sets everything up, I think, really well. You know, you
It
could
does.
sort of consider episode 5 Inquisition to, you know, certainly not the most action heavy, you know, episode, because I think what it was really trying to do was just set up what was coming
Yep.
for the next episode. But overall, I really liked episode 5 because I think it really leaned into the sort of police procedural type of
Sure.
scenes, and, you know, the Jedi being hunted. We got really cool looks at Janix as a city, right? The subway station. There were these cool shots of, you know, the Empire moving through the city and taking over the city. And we saw Drea Lawson for the first time, you know,
Hmm.
and kind of got to see her side of the story a little bit. But overall, I really liked episode 5.
Same here.
But we're going to jump right into episode 6,
Yep.
Night of the Hunted,
Mhm.
which I think most people will agree is probably the best episode so far.
Yeah, this is crazy.
And it's just kind of nuts. But so we open on this scene, and Jordan, I know you have a lot to say about this scene.
Yes.
So we open on this scene of like Maul, like training, like just down in his lair, and he's training.
Which I don't think we've really ever seen before. So that was
No.
just, cool to see. Of course, he's one of the best and one of the best at dueling, with the saber, but, still has to practice, still has to get in the mindset of it. So it's pretty awesome to, seem to do that. You know, we talked about with the tea as well. Like he's never been really one to probably meditate or anything like that, but it
Right.
seems like he still does have some kind of, you know, traditional tactics to prepare himself, you know, for a battle or just, you know, his to get in his mindset.
Yeah, and there were a couple of like movements that he did during the training that you said were could be references to something, right?
Yeah, so one of the poses he gets into, I saw something about this. Apparently, it looks very similar, or is probably a direct reference to the silhouette of Starkiller, and of course
Mm-hmm.
also Sam Witwer in the logo of the Forced Unleashed games. So, I'm pretty sure that was definitely a reference to that, and that of course Sam Witwer playing both characters. So I thought that was an awesome little detail that they had him kind of in the same pose as Starkiller.
Yeah, and like the way that Maul moves when he's doing this training, it's so fluid and so
Oh my
like
god.
natural looking that it almost feels like it's motion capture. Like it doesn't even
Yeah.
feel like just standard animation. It feels like motion capture, which
And
is
I mean, I
just
know that
nuts.
they did that with Ray Park for season 7 of Clone Wars, and I don't know if they actually did that for this show again, or had any reference work to look at, but I do know, and I think we talked about this in the last stream, that Sam Witwer did a lot more than just voice acting. I know he like put on, or they put on like the Maul makeup and markings just
Yep.
to get his facial expressions, to kind of model that on Maul, based on how he actually says it, how he also looks. So I do wonder if, I'm pretty sure he does know a little bit of, how to use a lightsaber himself and some of the training involved. So I don't know if they
Some
did
martial
model any
arts.
of it after him or martial arts, that kind of stuff. So that
Yeah.
that would be cool to find out. But yeah, I mean, his movements are just unreal. Even with, two robotic legs, it's not even like, he's fully himself and has been, and yet he's still, he doesn't move like a droid.
Yeah, and unlike a lot of the Sith that we sort of that are very famous, like Vader, for example, or even Palpatine,
Yep. Even
who
Dooku.
in Dooku, Vader, of course, is this very heavy, slow, you
Yep.
know, very slow, heavy attacks, and like if you play I'm going to shout out Star Wars Battlefront 2,
Mhm.
because when you play as Vader, you're like a tank. Like you just move slow, these heavy, slow attacks. And when you play as Maul, you're jumping up all around.
Yeah,
You're
it's more
spinning, you're
acrobatic.
twirling, you're jumping, you're spinning, and you're moving like at lightning speed. So, but Maul, I think, out of all of the more graceful type of lightsaber wielders, especially on the dark side that we've seen, I think Maul is probably the most graceful type of
Yes.
duelist that we've seen, which is just really cool. And his training is interrupted again by Rookcast. Rookcast just always comes in and interrupts stuff to tell him what's going on. But uh, Spybot has detected Marok on the planet and sort of near their lair. So this confirms for Maul that the Inquisitors have, not only is the Empire here, but an Inquisitor has actually arrived, and he's sort of snooping around. So Maul is sort of jumping into action with that as well. Um, and then we cut back to Docky and Devin in Lawson's apartment. Um, Lawson is very concerned that they've decided to show up unannounced because
Yeah.
he's like, look, do you know what the Empire is going to do to me if they even know that I've even spoken to you or know that you exist? What would they do to me? What they could do to my son, etc. And Docky's just like, yeah, they would probably do the same to you what they're going to do to us. So I know that this is a big risk for you, and but we need a way out of the system. We're Jedi who have survived he actually calls it a purge.
Yeah.
But we're Jedi who have survived the purge. We are just passing through your system, and we've been caught in the crossfire. We're just looking for a place to take refuge, either in the city or trying to, a way to leave the city.
Yep.
And
And it, you know, I mean, I get it, and I of course like Devin and Docky, but you know, to me, it does seem a little crazy that they're, you know, willing to put you know, Lawson and his son in this much danger. I mean, of course, they could provide protection,
I know.
but you know, it of course, you know, they didn't really have anywhere to go, and it's kind of their last resort. You know, I'm sure they didn't want to have to, but I mean, it's a big ask, you know, that they, of course, Riley let them in, but to kind of show up unannounced and just, you know, assume that they'd be okay with it.
Especially for Master Docky, who's like Mr. We have to be selfless because,
Yeah.
you know, risking the lives of Lawson and his son for them to get out alive is kind of a selfish sort of,
Yeah.
you
I'd say
know,
so.
they're really putting Lawson's family and his livelihood on the line in a big way
Hmm.
to get what they want, which is usually not a Jedi thing, but these are trying times. These are dark
Sure.
times for the Jedi. So even Docky gets kind of desperate, you know, sometimes. But there's a funny exchange where like the conversation starts to get a little bit more heated, and Docky says, you know, why don't he talks to Devin. He's like, why don't you go with Riley and let the adults talk or whatever, and which is kind of funny to me. So Devin like very reluctantly gets up and leaves. And so while Docky and Lawson are having this conversation, Devin and Riley are inside Riley's room. And I only bring this up because this is a super rare thing to see, as we've discussed already, actually, in previous episodes. A rare thing to see like someone's actual living space.
Yeah.
And especially like an average person's living space, in a teenager's living space at that. So it's kind of, I'm always curious to see how Star Wars characterizes just average everyday people's, you know, life, and, you know, what normal living spaces look like and how much it sort of connects to our own, you know, reality, and how much it's, you know, different. But it looks like a pretty typical, you know, teenager's room. And I guess I don't know the specific Easter eggs, but I guess there are several Easter eggs inside Riley's room that are direct assets that were used from Bad Batch, actually,
Oh wow.
which is pretty cool. I don't know what they are. I'll have to go back
Neither
and
do
look,
I.
but I do know that there was a Star Wars database entry on their website that said that there's some hidden Bad Batch references in his room, which is pretty cool to me.
Yeah.
But so Devin and Riley sort of have this awkward conversation with each other, where Devin is sort of asking Riley about his life, and, you know, there's your picture of your parents, you know, what's up with your mom, you know, oh, they're divorced. You know, he's like, but I stayed on Janix because of school and my team, you know, and so Devin's like, oh, so you're into sports, and Riley's like, you've never heard of Bodekin? So I was wrong. I'll tell you that, because last week I said that we wouldn't get an actual reference to the name of the sport Bodekin
Yeah.
in the whole show, because I thought if we were going to get that, it was going to be last week where they actually
Sure.
showed Riley playing the sport. So I thought if they didn't say it there, we were never going to hear it. But this episode, I was proven wrong. Riley said Bodekin. He actually said it. So it's pretty funny. But when they have this back and forth, it really lays bare how much that Jedi younglings or Jedi Padawans just do not have a regular childhood, like at
No.
all. Because Devin's sitting here, and the things that Riley is saying to her, it's like a foreign language to her. Like she doesn't, oh, so you go to school, you have friends, you play sports, you know, you have parents, right? Because Devin probably doesn't even know, you know, who her parents are, because she was taken as an infant, you know, to the Jedi
Yep.
Order. So it's just a totally foreign thing. And I think it's interesting to see this contrast between two teenagers. You know, one grew up as a Jedi, one just grew up as a regular person, and the big contrast in their lives. And I think this is a big moment for Devin too, where she sort of,
Yeah.
again, is like, wait a minute, you know, there was a lot of things that the Jedi didn't do for me, or the Jedi kind of didn't show me. And this is a whole
No.
side of life that I never knew existed.
Exactly. And, of course, there's a lot of things that are crazy with it. Like, it's essentially like getting drafted into the military, as like an infant
With
or,
having no
you
choice, you know?
having no choice, and you start training in elementary school, basically. But,
Mm-hmm.
even just socially, I mean, of course, there are, other younglings that they were with. But, and I'm sure they still taught them certain types of classes. I'm sure they still had some school like, events, but yeah, I mean, it's kind of like probably a culture shock, to her, and to someone who's only known war and, surviving and fighting, and to see someone just have a childhood, their own personalized room and playing sports and friends, it's got to be hard for her to see that.
Yeah, Devin's probably thinking like, must be nice.
Yeah.
Must be nice to have all these things that I never had, you know? Which I think further is sort of solidifying in her mind some of the things that Maul was, pushing on her, that the Jedi didn't tell you,
Yeah.
the truth about life, and, hid things from you and prevented you from doing certain things. And I think this is kind of an inadvertent example of that.
True.
But as they're having this conversation, this little sweet kind of moment, friendly moment, doesn't last very long, because then we see a red lightsaber just carve through their front door. And who is it but Marok? So he just shows up out of nowhere, and we have to wonder, how the hell did he know they were there? Like, how did that happen? Did he imply, based on his interview or interrogation with Lawson, that he knew that Lawson was friends with them somehow, and like just showed up at his apartment? Maybe he got the address from the police precinct and just showed up? Or did he use, his force psychometry, that ability to be able to sort of somehow like track where the Jedi had gone, almost like a scent or something, or, felt them in the force, who knows? But he just shows up, and, Devin and Master Docky confront the Inquisitor. But while they're fighting, Lawson and Riley kind of leave out the window. They escape out the window and start climbing up to the roof to get away. And Master Docky tells him tells Devin to like go protect them. I'll hold off the Inquisitor. And I really thought at this moment, I was like, okay, this is it. I thought
Same here. I thought
Docky was cooked. I thought he was cooked here. But he's not. He wasn't cooked. We cut up to the rooftop where Devin is protecting Lawson and Riley. There's a gunship that shows up with some troopers that are attacking them. And, Devin says, "Hey, Lawson, I don't think going up to the roof was such a great idea." And then Lawson kind of retorts. He's like, "Well, showing up at my doorstep unannounced was also not a good plan either." So, we're both guilty of bad planning here. And this is a really cool scene, and we saw this in the trailers actually, where Devin eventually like jumps up onto the gunship and uses the force to like throw the pilot out of his cockpit, and she jumps in and starts flying the gunship herself, which is really
that to me is such like an Anakin or Ahsoka move, from the
it
Clone
really
Wars.
is.
We've
It's
seen
very,
both of them do that a bunch.
very nimble, acrobatic thing. And we'll get to this later, but Devin is really surprising me how competent she is, I guess.
Same here.
Like she's really good. She is really, really talented. And so she starts flying the gunship, and she gets Lawson and Riley to hop on with her. And then Docky shows up again and is fighting Marok on the rooftop. Now, thankfully, Docky does not die. He is able to escape on the gunship with the rest of them, and they fly away, and Marok is sort of left on the rooftop. They're being chased by a bunch of other gunships throughout the city, and there's actually a lot of really cool like chase scenes, little mini scenes that happen. And at one point, even like Lawson like pops his head out of the side and is like shooting at them. And Devin does these crazy like aerodynamic maneuvers where like she's flying so fast and takes these sharp turns and up and down, and the other gunships just crash. They can't
Yeah.
keep up. So again, Devin is really surprising me. She's a super competent force user, really skilled with the saber, and she's a really good pilot.
Yeah.
Which,
The whole package.
that's kind of the magic formula for Jedi, because we've seen a lot of great Jedi, especially during the Clone Wars, right? Anakin, Ahsoka, Obi-Wan, Mace Windu, Yoda. There's a lot of great Jedi out there. Plo Koon. But she seems to really hold her own, even just as a Padawan. Like, I'm really impressed by her skills. But so there's this sort of chase sequence that happens, and eventually their gunship is shot down, and they sort of crash land on this platform above the city, and then they, make their escape. And then we jump back to the police precinct, and we see all of these Imperial troops marching around through the city still. So a total takeover. But something that I wanted to draw our attention to, again, huge vehicle nerd, we see some walkers in the background. And these aren't just any walkers. Again, in the same, vein of thought as the TK troopers, right, versus stormtroopers, and Republic gunships versus TIE fighters. The walkers we see here are not the typical Imperial ATST walkers that we all have seen in the movies and everything. These are actually called ATAC walkers, which stands for All-Terrain Armored Cannon. And these, again, are a transition model between Republic era equipment and Imperial era equipment. So if you guys are watching the stream or watching the video podcast, you'll see the slide here. On the far left, we have the ATAC, which we see in Shadow Lord. It first appeared in Bad Batch, which I figured I'd point out. So it's a pretty new design. And in the middle, we have something called the ATDP, which we see in Rebels. And then finally, on the far right here, we have the ATST, the All-Terrain Scout Transport, which is, the classic Imperial walker that we all have seen, in Return of the Jedi and everything else. So again, really cool little references to show how the Empire has not yet fully transitioned to what they will become, but sort of in that middle phase between phasing out Republic era stuff and phasing in sort of classic Imperial designs. But then we cut inside the police precinct, where Two Boots is talking to another police officer, and the police officer is expressing concerns about how quickly things have escalated on Janix.
Yeah.
And Two Boots is like, "What are you talking about? It's going great. The Empire's here. Everything's super efficient. We have a lot more resources to take on MAUL. This is great." And I think that Lawson, once he sees how well we're doing here, he will agree with me that calling the Empire was a great idea. And literally, as he's finishing his words, the entire precinct gets broadcasted like this wanted poster of Lawson, who's now considered a high-level fugitive of the Empire, and lethal force has been authorized against him to take him out. So, yeah, I guess their fight in the gunships got, everyone riled up in the Empire. And now, so Lawson is officially, along with MAUL, along with Devin, and along with Docky, is a high level fugitive of the Empire now. So he's also, I guess,
even Riley, if they saw him.
Yeah, even Riley. They don't show him, but I assume that they've mentioned that, he's an accomplice, or also if you find him, then take his son as well. And then we cut to Lieutenant Blake showing up, and was like, "Well, Lawson's wanted. I don't think you guys want to follow in his footsteps, so you better behave," basically.
Yeah.
And as right before we leave this scene, Lieutenant Blake looks down and sees Two Boots' boots on him, and he's like, "These are not standard These are not standard uniform. You know, you need to get rid of these right now. Which is a very imperial thing to say, right? Because the Empire
Yeah.
is all about stripping the identity and
No
stripping
identity.
individuality from people. We see it in the designs of the troopers. We see it in the vehicle designs. They've made them all apples, space gray or silver,
Yeah.
and Two Boots wearing his two boots, which he, you know, are his namesake. So this is a very, very ham-fisted, like getting rid of his identity kind of thing, because they're asking
Exactly.
him to take off the thing that gave him his nickname in the first
Yeah.
place, that made him different than the other droids, was wearing the boots on his feet.
Hmm. You know, I'll say I honestly didn't actually notice that he was wearing two boots in the first few episodes. I don't know how I didn't notice it, but
Yeah.
I mean, of course, they didn't maybe bring attention to it. But I was kind of wondering the whole time, like, oh, I wonder where his nickname or name actually comes from. You know, whether it's like a literal thing or if it means something else. So I do think it's cool that now we got, you know, a little bit more of his identity. Which, you know, again, it's weird with Two Boots because he clearly does have, you know, his own identity and some sort of a, you know, more actual friendly relationship. So, you know, it seems like we said, you know, that he's like a police droid. You know, he's kind of caught between, you know, wanting to actually, you know, be like a real person and just, you know, being stuck to focusing on protocols too. So I hope that this is finally the change where, you know, the fact that they're making him take off, you know, probably his favorite two boots, you know,
Mm-hmm.
that maybe he'll realize the Empire is not so good. And obviously that Lawson is now wanted, which is essentially, you know, arguably his fault. So
Yeah. No, I think it is his fault. And I don't know,
yeah,
but I don't know if Two Boots is going to see it that way, or if
maybe
it'll
not.
take time for him to, you know, see it that way. Um, but like, you know, this seems very like a fundamental thing, but I do kind of I'm now asking myself, you know, because Two Boots says, "Oh, I'm following protocol." Lawson says, "Okay, you know, it's not his fault. He's following protocol." Well, what is the protocol? Is the
Right.
protocol like what is the highest protocol? Is it to, you know, protect and defend the citizens of Janix? Because if that is true, right, then we're starting to get into the territory of, you know, the Empire being here actually is not in the best interest of the citizens of
Nope.
Janix or the interests of the city. So what is the protocol? Is it to protect and defend the citizens of Janix at all, you know, above all else? Or is it to, you know, deliver justice to criminals? Like what is his actual like highest level function, you know?
Exactly.
And I think we may see a little bit of that conflict moving forward. But as I said earlier in the stream so far, it feels like every episode we're getting a further reduction in Two Boots' personality and
Yep.
his spark and the things that made him so unique in the first place. And we don't see him actually taking off the boots, but it's entirely possible the next time we see him, he will not be wearing the boots anymore.
Hmm.
And I don't know if we'll even get to call him Two Boots at that point.
Yeah. Right. Just
Um,
blend in.
but then we cut back to Lawson and Devin and Docky and Riley and everybody. And Lawson basically says, I have one person that might be able to help us. You know, this is a Hail
Mhm.
Mary, but we're gonna see. And we find out that the person he had in mind was Rena, who was that nightclub owner lady
Yep.
that Lawson knew that he had spoken with, who seems to be connected to the criminal underworld in the city to some degree. So they go back to Rena's, which we thought was a nightclub. At least I did, based on all the neon
Same
signs
here.
and stuff in the front. We didn't actually see the inside other than Rena's quarters, but I just assumed it was like a nightclub. But it's actually a casino. It could also be a club, but at least the
Yep.
entrance area that we see, it's a casino. And this is the most un-Star Wars looking room
Honestly,
I've
yeah.
ever seen, because this just looks like the Hard Rock. Like this just
Yeah.
looks
Right.
like a Planet Earth Casino 2026. Like it I mean
Those are
it,
just straight up like some slots machines, and
yeah.
you know.
And you got like the pattern on the carpet, you know,
Yep.
like
Yep.
even, obviously there is some futuristic kind of sci-fi Star Wars elements. You even have, of course, the protocol droid there with the aliens, playing the slot machines. But
Yep.
as far as the visual aesthetics of this casino, it seems just like 2026 casino. Like it's not super alien or out there. And I guess the only other reference point we have for a casino style area in Star Wars is, of course, like Canto Bight, from The Last Jedi. It was also in the Star Wars Outlaws game. That had its own very unique look to it. It was, I think, a much more upscale, higher end casino area. But that's really our only reference point. So I thought I would point that out because this is kind of a weird look at a casino in Star Wars, but it looks more like a casino on planet Earth than anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
But Rena and Lawson speak with each other. She reluctantly agrees to help him and Docky and Devin and Riley. And they're like, she's like, we need to talk upstairs. So they go back, they go upstairs, but before it cuts to them upstairs, we're lingering on this weird shot of this alien. And I know this species exists. I know it exists. I know I've seen it before. I can't place where. I don't know the name. I didn't look it up or anything. I couldn't find it, but I know that this is like an established species in Star Wars, but just like we're laughing because it just looks so silly.
Why does it look like that?
And she's like super like weird and smarmy and just like she's like sipping out of this long straw and kind of has this weird look as Rena is taking Lawson and everyone upstairs. Like, I don't know. This is the type of stuff that I love about Star Wars is you just get random stuff like this. Mm-hmm. And it's just kind of funny. I if anyone is watching or is watching the VOD of this, if you guys know the name of this species, let us know in the comments because I know it exists. I just can't remember what it's called. And maybe we'll get a name for this character. This is just like a new glup shit.
We need a character poster for this character.
We do need a character. We need a full Instagram post from Star Wars official and Lucasfilm accounts of a full biography of. You know what? We need a spin-off book.
We do. Yeah.
We need a spin-off book of this lady, whoever she is. We need a spin-off. It's like a prequel to Shadow Lord, and it's like her in the casino and
playing poker and
playing poker and sabacc and everything. And yeah, I don't know what this is or who this is, or even if she's really particularly important later on in the series, but they linger on her for a good couple seconds. So there's something going on.
As are we
with her.
now.
As are we. We've spent even more. We've given her more screen time in this stream than she had in the episode. So with that, I'm going to move away from her because I don't want to look at her face anymore. So we follow Rena and Lawson upstairs and the rest of the crew. And what happens? So Lawson is pleading with Rena to get them off world. Or, she's like, you must, or he says to her, you must know a way off the planet, a way to smuggle someone out, you have to have connections. And she's like, well, it's kind of impossible right now because of the Empire. The police have really messed up and the whole city is on lockdown. It's not just the police that are screwed. Everybody's screwed. And I can't really help you. And he's just like, I really need help. I would not come to you unless I was super desperate. I mean, he even says that. Yep. And he like kind of puts his hand on her shoulder. And again, another strange shot that I wasn't expecting was we cut to, as Lawson's doing this, we cut to Devin and Riley, and Devin like shoots Riley a look as his dad, is putting his hand on this woman's shoulder. And it's like this weird, like skeptical look that she has. And Riley just looks confused. Like he doesn't really it doesn't like register with him. But Devin specifically has this very kind of concerned look when he does that. And I don't really know what that's about.
Yeah.
It's kind of an interesting, shot from the episode.
Agreed.
But then we cut back to the city where the Empire is continuing to hunt down, search for Devin, search for Docky, search for Maul, and searching for Lawson now. And we see an Imperial probe droid actually, which is pretty cool because we don't see those too often in this part of the timeline. And it's the first time we've seen it in Shadow Lord. And I don't have a slide image of it, but Spybot finds it and he narrows his eyes and he says like trashy droid. He like zooms in on the protocol droid and says trashy droid. So it's funny that there's sort of a beef between different droid models. It seems Spybot has
Yep.
He doesn't care for probe droids. But we cut to like Maul again, and now that he knows that Marok is here, he knows that that Marok is going to be gunning after Devin and Docky. Already has, as we've seen in the episode. So he prepares to leave the lair underground, and Rook asks him why, and Maul says another one of Maul's cryptic lines he's been giving out all series, which is the strongest metal is forged at the Crucible. And he's talking about Devin. And he also says that Devin only needs to prove her resilience and she will become my ally. So again, these very cryptic messages from Maul talking about, I think part of him too almost wants to see Devin in action and see what she can actually do against the Jedi Hunter. So as much as he's going to actually stop Marok from killing Devin, I think at the same time, part of him wants to see Devin fight the Inquisitor for at least a little bit.
Yeah, she's actually capable.
Right. But we come back to Rena and Lawson, and Docky asks Lawson if they can really trust her. And this is where we get a little bit of a lore dump on Lawson, his backstory and Rena's backstory, because as Lawson says, yes, we can trust her because Rena and I go way back. Rena used to be a bounty hunter, and before I was a cop, I traveled with her. Now, he doesn't really mention what he was doing traveling with the bounty hunter.
Yeah.
It's not confirmed or not, whether or not, he was also a bounty hunter.
Right. Or was he even, a cop at that time? And like, she was kind of like an informant, we don't really know.
Or maybe like, maybe the cops hired bounty hunters to help them on find someone or crack a case. I can see that happening. But I guess there was a mission that they were both on long ago that went wrong or went sour. And it was on a planet called Catalor. He brings that up. I've never heard of that planet before. I don't know if that's been mentioned in Star Wars before, but apparently the planet was called Catalor. And anyways, at the end, they ended up both making it out, only just the two of them, and they saved each other's lives. So they sort of have this life debt with each other. So we do get a little bit of the backstory here with Lawson and Rena and maybe what Lawson did before joining the police force on Janix. But all of a sudden they spot Imperials who have entered the casino, and they ask, Rena says, don't worry guys, I'll take care of it. I'll go down there and handle it. But if things get messy, here's a secret elevator you can take. And it just comes out of the wall, and it's this elevator that they can go to. But she goes down there and is very formal and is like, hey guys, what's going on? How can I help you? And they just like brush right past her, and she's like, okay. And then they start grabbing her, and then she just like punches the stormtrooper and knocks him out. So things went very wrong very quickly, which is what they expected. So Riley and Devin get on the elevator, the secret elevator inside Rena's quarters, and it takes them down. I'm pretty sure they go down like to
Yeah.
this underground kind of parking garage area. And Docky and Lawson are staying back to fight the stormtroopers who are attacking, but Devin and Riley are down here and they're trying to escape themselves. But when they get down to the parking garage, there's of course stormtroopers there patrolling the area. And because of that, they turn around and Devin notices an entrance to the train station or the subway system. So they go down to the subway system. And as they go down, we see Marok is there and he like turns his head almost as if he kind of senses that Devin, where Devin's going, which is interesting. But eventually, Lawson and Docky are able to escape as well. And so they're fighting stormtroopers and they're down in the parking garage area. And Docky assures Lawson, because Lawson says, "Where's Riley? Is Riley okay?" And Docky's like, "Yes, he's in good hands. Devin will protect him." And Lawson's like, "I don't really trust, I'm not just taking why do I just take your word for it?"
Yeah, right.
This
is my son we're talking about.
This is my son we're talking about. And Docky's like, "You have my word." He's like, "Well, that doesn't really mean much to me. I don't really know you too well." Which makes me think, what is Lawson's kind of relationship or opinion or understanding of Jedi?
Mm-hmm.
Because we kind of pick up on the idea, during the Republic timeline that, Jedi are kind of known as just, guardians of peace and justice, and they uphold truth and are selfless, and, their word means a lot. So it's either Lawson doesn't really know much about Jedi, or maybe he does not share the opinion that Jedi are these, selfless warriors of peace, so he doesn't really trust Docky's word, even though he is a Jedi, which I think is kind of interesting. Or, but at the same time, we have to think about Lawson as a character and his personality. He's very much a pragmatist, and, he's a cop, so he deals in facts and hard evidence. He's not, the Jedi is not really part of his, he doesn't overlap much with Jedi as far as their value system or how they conduct themselves. But as Devin and Riley are escaping down to the subway, a spy bot finds them, and this tips off MAUL of where they're going too. So MAUL now knows where Devin's headed. Marok knows where Devin's headed. So everyone's sort of going to start to eventually converge here. And that does happen because as Riley and Devin get to the train station, as the train arrives at the station, Marok finds them. They all get on the train. So there's this really amazing lightsaber duel that happens on this high-speed train or subway system underground. And Marok and Devin are duking it out. And again, to Devin's credit, she is really holding her own.
She's holding her own.
I mean, Marok really isn't holding back either. He's not like going nice on her,
Nah, he's going for the kill.
Yeah, he's really going for the kill. And Devin, you can tell it's very difficult for her, and she does kind of stumble and fall a few times, but she keeps getting back up and she keeps fighting. And I think that is pretty awesome. Again, she's really impressing me with her force abilities, and she doesn't even have Docky with her. This is just by herself. And this whole time Riley's kind of hiding in behind a bunch of crates on the subway or whatever, while they're fighting. But then Marok kind of leans in really close and asks Devin, "Where's MAUL?" He just says, "Where's MAUL?" And then MAUL shows up and he says, "I'm right here." And there's this really cool shot of MAUL, above, kind of on an elevator platform, and he turns on his lightsaber and he jumps down and starts fighting the Inquisitor as well. So
Actually,
now,
I saw a cool detail too. I didn't notice it initially, but apparently, if you slow down right before he asks where Maul is, there's like a shot of just, the train moving by pretty fast. And if you slow it down and pause it, you could actually see in between each train car the silhouette of Maul just waiting to jump on the train, like,
wow.
waiting along the side. So,
See, I wish I had included that in the slideshow and had caught that, because that is a really
yeah,
cool
yeah, we'll have to
detail.
see if we could find the picture of it. I saw it in another video that they like, they didn't have to add in that detail visually, but pretty cool that they even did.
Yeah. Um, and that kind of, you bringing that up reminded me to say something. Like, obviously this show, the animation is incredible. But I think obviously the show is very dark. I don't mean tonally, I just mean visually.
Hmm.
But something that I've noticed is it's very easy to lose certain details because of how dark it is. And unless you're
Sure.
watching it on a certain screen that supports or, has a lot of brightness or color, gamut, or is maybe even HDR compatible, it can be really easy to miss some of the details of the show, the visual
Definitely.
details. So it really pays off to watch this show or enjoy this show on a really nice display, to fully appreciate all the cool little things, or slowing it down and rewatching things like the detail you mentioned of
Yeah.
Maul's silhouette in the passing train cars. That's really cool. But yeah, so Maul shows up. Now he starts fighting Marok, and it's really cool because this is really the first time that Maul and Devin are
Hmm.
teaming up. This is exactly what Maul wanted, right? Um, and so now we have a former Jedi Padawan and a former Sith apprentice teaming up together, fighting an Inquisitor, which is just really cool. And this might also be the only time we've seen two people with double-bladed red lightsabers
Yeah.
fighting each other. I
Yeah,
can't.
that's a good point. I
I,
never thought of that.
I can't think of any other example right now off the top of my head of two people with double-bladed red sabers facing off like this. So it's just, of course, we saw some of these shots in the trailer. We knew this was coming, but seeing the build up and how we got here, I think was really cool. And, it goes without saying, because the animation has been incredible throughout the whole series, but the lightsaber fight here is just awesome. You get the flurry of red sabers going at it and everything. But while they're fighting, eventually Devin actually uses her lightsaber to cut off the train link, and so Marok gets left behind, and the rest of the train keeps going with them. So I when she did that, I was thinking to myself, like, she could have done this a long time ago, or
Yeah,
why
honestly.
didn't they think of this earlier? Because that is a really easy way to get rid of Marok.
Yeah.
They obviously they didn't kill him, but like they give themselves a really big head start by doing this.
Hmm.
Um, but the second that Marok is sort of dealt with and is left behind, Devin immediately turns to Maul,
Hmm.
with her saber, and is looking at him like, I'm ready to fight you. And she's ready to do it. But then Maul turns off his lightsaber, deactivates his saber, and just walks away. And Devin does the same. She turns off her saber. So I feel like Devin in episode 1 would have just fought Maul right then and there.
Yeah.
But Doki's not there to fight Maul, and she's not going to do it herself, right? Because she wants to work with Maul in some way. So again, you see these small little changes happening with Devin, and I
Hmm.
think, I don't know, this was a really a telling scene to me. And Maul says to her as he walks away, he says, "Well, now you've seen the face of your true enemy." Basically saying the Empire is the
Not
real
me.
enemy. It's the Inquisitors, it's the Jedi Hunters. I'm not your enemy. That is the face of the true enemy that you have to fight.
Hmm.
And we don't really see the rest of that conversation, because the final shot of the episode is Marok, who has went back to the Imperial Star Destroyer orbiting Janix, and he kneels in the room, and a hologram turns on, and he says, "We found MAUL. We're facing much more resistance than anticipated, and he also seems to be working with 2 Jedi. How, my lord, how shall I proceed?" is what he says. And this is the shot. This is the last thing we see. So, which is the biggest question of the entire episode. Who is Marok talking
Who is
to here?
that?
Who is that? Who is he referring to? And I have 2 theories. I think there's 2 possibilities. I think, he says, "My lord, how shall I proceed?" So the slightly lamer option, I think, would be if it was the Grand Inquisitor.
Yeah.
Right? Because the Grand Inquisitor is the guy who's in charge of all he's like the head Inquisitor. So it would make sense that Marok would be reporting to him.
True.
However, when Marok says "my lord," it makes me think he's talking about Vader, which is what we had theorized last week. We said that Vader might show up. The hologram itself gives us really zero indicator.
Yeah,
It's
nothing.
just,
I was trying to listen to musical cues too, in case there was like, because they did, kind of have a version of the Imperial March when the Star Destroyer first showed up,
right.
which already could have been, a hint at who could be coming. I can't remember exactly. I don't think there was actually a musical cue to that, but doesn't mean that, it's not him. That maybe, they probably didn't want to make it obvious, but I'm also kind of on the Vader train right now. Part of me feels that someone like the Grand Inquisitor, like as cool as he is, I don't think he deserves the cliffhanger,
No.
for the reveal. And, of course, the other option could be Sidious, and they, of course, Maul has brought him up, and they've, maybe been teasing that he could show up. But, I don't know. I don't think that the Inquisitors would be, directly speaking to Sidious.
No.
I don't know if we've really seen that.
No, I think because, like, obviously I don't know how the exact hierarchy works between Palpatine versus Vader versus, whoever, versus Tarkin versus Thrawn versus Krennic, all these high level Imperial people. But it seems to me that if Marok was reporting to Vader, it would be like a mid-level manager talking to the CEO directly. Like,
right.
It's like, it's like there's like a few other layers of people that you need to report to before you just go straight up to the CEO.
Sure.
So, like, and again, if it was just a Grand Inquisitor, again, it would be a cool reveal because I do like that character. He was in Rebels. He's in the Kenobi show. He's an important character and a cool character. But this kind of if it was him, I feel like they just would have showed his face.
That's kind of how I feel too. I don't think he would, it would have been like, oh, there he is. But like the way they left this off, and especially calling him my lord. I mean, it's Lord Vader.
Right. It's Sith Lord Vader because, and the only, like, the Grand Inquisitor isn't a lord of any kind. He's just the Inquisitor. No. He's just, and I remember in the Tales of the Empire, the animated shorts that they had, there was an episode, I think with Marok, actually. It was the one where the Marok was in. And they're on Nur, which is the planet where they train the Inquisitors, where they have the Fortress Inquisitorius base. And they're all kneeling in front of Vader, and they say, like, my lord. They refer to him as my lord there.
Yep.
So I really think it is Vader. And Vader is the one that's in charge of the Inquisitors. Like, yes, there's the Grand Inquisitor, but the person that the Grand Inquisitor reports to is Vader. And we see that in the whole Kenobi show, that communication between Vader and the Inquisitor. And when the Inquisitors mess up or not do what they're supposed to do, or the situation escalates, Vader's the one who steps in.
Yeah, and someone like Maul, and of course, now 2 other Jedi, that seems like an important enough, uh, you know, situation to reach out to Vader and not just the Grand Inquisitor. You know, of course, like Grand Inquisitor was involved with a lot more of the rebel stuff. I mean, of course, Kanan was a Jedi, but you know, you could argue not as big of a threat as someone like Maul. You know, that
Right.
they would be interested in. So
Agreed. And yeah, Maul, I mean, Sidious himself has showed up to take care of Maul, you know, during the Clone Wars. So Maul is
yeah, that's how
actually
big
a
of a deal he is.
genuine, yes, he's a big deal and he is a genuine threat to the Empire's rule and to Sidious and Vader specifically.
Yep.
Because we have to remember, Maul was trained by Sidious. Like Maul is a direct apprentice of Sidious at one point. He knows Sidious's games. Sidious trained him. He's really good. He's really powerful.
Yeah, he's
And
really probably the biggest threat in the galaxy to Sidious in terms of what the knowledge he possesses and his abilities.
exactly, knowledge, abilities, what he's capable of. I think more than any other Jedi right now in the galaxy,
Yeah,
more than Obi-Wan, you know,
even Yoda.
more than definitely more than Yoda, because Yoda, remember this part of the timeline, it's very fresh off of episode 3. Yoda
Yeah,
tried to fight Sidious and failed, right? He tried and he failed. So, you know, in Obi-Wan's weak and not at his strength and power from the end of episode 3. He's off hiding on Tatooine. Really the biggest threat to Sidious's power, just raw power and force, is Maul.
yep.
And this is the kind of threat that they wouldn't just, you know, send the Grand Inquisitor and not put Vader or Palpatine on the case with this. Because here's what I think happened, right? I think there was a report that Maul was on Janix. Now, Vader is one guy, and Vader's time is very valuable. So they're not just going to send Vader on these wild goose chases every time
Yep.
someone reports Maul or another force sensitive person. That's why the Inquisitorius was founded in the first place, was so there
Yep.
was a group of people that they could send out to hunt down Jedi.
Mhm.
Um,
Vader's also, you know, very new at this point at being Vader. You know, I
yeah,
mean, you could
he
argue
just
he's still
became Vader.
probably recovering, you know, from the injuries, you know, from Mustafar. And I mean, I don't know exactly how long this has been again, but you know, it's not too far from it. So you know, he still isn't like his full peak form of Vader yet either. I mean, well, maybe we'll find out. Maybe he is, but you know, so yeah,
Yeah, agreed. And like Vader just, you know, basically what they probably did was when they got this tip that Maul was on Janix, they sent Marok because he's really good, but he's not Vader, right? Just to make sure
hmm
that Maul's actually
yep,
here and what kind of threat Maul really poses. Because again, one of the things that Marok says to Maul when they first show up, he's like, "Oh, so you're alive after all." It's like they didn't even believe that Maul had
yeah,
survived the Clone Wars. So
mhm.
when there was a report, you know, from a Janix local police department that
Yeah,
Maul
right.
was on their
All
planet, it's like, all right, we're gonna send a Star Destroyer. We're gonna take it seriously, but we're not gonna, you know, send Vader himself. You know, we're not quite there yet. But now it has escalated, you know, and Maul is basically like, I would like to see your manager, please. And I think that is when Vader's going to show up. And that might be the big bad that Maul will have to deal with,
which is crazy. And you
which
know,
is
I
just
think we talked
insane.
about this last stream too. You know, we know that he's pretty afraid of Vader and what he's capable of in
Mm-hmm.
Rebels. So, which kind of led us to think, okay, he obviously must have, you know, other than just hearing stories and knowing, you know, that it's Anakin, you know, must have actually encountered him, you know, before then. So I think this is going to be where we see that, which is pretty cool.
I agree. And so I guess that leads us into our final thoughts on the episodes and other than Vader, what we can really expect going in for episodes 7 and 8 next week. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I definitely now expect this Maul and Devin relationship to kind of build a little bit more. We already see her, you know, in terms of her views and you know, Maul's you know, opinions are kind of already spilling into hers and of course now she just fought alongside him and I think, you know, she's gonna start to realize, you know, how big of an issue this really is
Yep.
and you know, as much as she might want to agree with Docky as well. I think in these trying times, as we said, he's kind of their best option to survive right now. So assuming, they don't get off world, which right now it does not look like they're going to. So, I don't know how Docky's going to take it. I still don't feel good about him surviving, but if anything, maybe in a weird way, he's kind of holding her back and her true potential. Not that
Mm-hmm.
we want to see, her true potential in the form of, working with Maul, because
Yeah,
that could
being
turn
Maul's
her
apprentice,
the
right?
wrong way. Exactly. But at the same time, I kind of feel like his death is what's going to, you know, um, kind of turn her on to, okay, I'm with Maul now, and that's how I'm going to survive.
Yeah, agreed.
So I think in the next, I don't think he makes it through the next couple episodes personally, unfortunately.
No, I think next week, as sad as it will be, I think Docky will pass away. I don't know who's going to kill him.
Yeah.
It could be Maroc, and Devin could see it happen, and then
Hmm.
Devin, would be like, okay, crap. Well, Docky's dead. That was my last like real connection to the Jedi Order, and now I need to find my own path, and that
Yep.
might be working with Maul. She
Hmm.
may never admit to be Maul's actual apprentice, but
Yep.
she will in effect be his apprentice, and she will be working with him. And Maul, being the master manipulator that he is, I think will, you know, further weave his way into her mind and plant those seeds of the dark side. And I have absolutely adored episode 5 and 6. Super
Hmm.
cool. We knew the Empire was going to show up. They're finally here. It's happening. And as I said in the beginning of the stream, I think this is the first introduction to sort of phase 2 of the series, where the Empire's
Yep.
here. Things are ramping up. We have Maroc, which I think his introduction was fantastic in the episode.
Yeah. And I know based on the trailers too, that we're definitely going to see the other Inquisitor. I forget, what his actual title is, but the one that we saw in the Ahsoka, Tales of the Jedi.
Right. Yeah, I will get to him. And you know, maybe Vader will be like, "Look, I'm busy, so we're just going to send a second Inquisitor. I'll get to you guys in a second, but in the meantime, I'm just going to send the second Inquisitor." And then something might happen to those two,
Yep.
or who knows, and then, Vader might show up at the end. But I don't know if we're going to see Vader next week. Maybe they'll save it for the
Yeah.
final episodes, for episodes 9 and 10. But yeah, I think if I was a betting man, I would say Docky is dying next week. Sad.
Yep.
It's very sad to say, but I think Docky's not making it. And who knows what's going to happen to Riley and Lawson,
Hmm.
because Riley
Yeah, they're
is
in a
not
tough
force
position right
sensitive.
now.
Riley is not a Jedi. He's not a Padawan. He doesn't know how to defend himself. He's just a kid. And
Yep. We're just fugitives now.
Lawson's a police officer. He has a weapon. We've seen him use his weapon. But again, he's not really any match for the Inquisitors, definitely. So I don't know what's going to happen with Lawson and Riley. I hope they'll be okay, and I hope they'll make it. I
Yep.
also agree with you, Jordan. I don't think we're leaving Janix anytime soon. I think we're staying on
No.
Janix. I thought that like maybe halfway through the series we would move on somewhere else, but I
Yep.
think we're staying put.
Yeah, unless Maul has a way off, if he has a ship we don't know about, and he's gonna try to escape maybe with Devin, I mean that's a possibility, but right now I don't see how we're getting off.
Yeah, me either. But I think that's going to wrap it up for tonight's
Yep.
episode. So I want to thank everyone again for tuning in. If you guys tuned in, unfortunately, I wasn't able to see chat. So, but if anyone who was watching or is watching this on a repeat or the VOD that's going to be available after the stream's over, definitely let us know down in the comments if you're watching Maul Shadow Lord with us,
Hmm.
what your predictions are for next week.
Yep.
And I want to thank Jordan for being another amazing guest for another fantastic episode. I really appreciate you being here, and
Of
all the
course.
insights you've been offering have been really fantastic. But with that said, yeah, thank you all for watching. Be sure to tune in next week. We're going to be talking about the next set of episodes, episodes 7 and 8, which are bound to be probably even crazier. Also, one last thing. If you guys want to watch this on the go, all of these episodes are also uploaded to Spotify, which I'll have linked in the description. So if you guys are on the go, want to check things out on Spotify, the stream will be available for you there as well. But that's going to wrap things up tonight. Thank you all so much for watching and tuning in. We'll see you all next time.
See you then.